Hello everyone, welcome to a video where we will do a deep dive of a software called Lossless Scaling. Now what does it do? Well, it is represented by the software logo that you currently see on the screen, the dot. Lossless Scaling in its simplest form is an upscaling program that you can use to turn a blurry, non-native resolution games into a sharp, enjoyable media without eating up lots of your computer resources. And now it even came with frame generation. What's that? We'll go through that along the way. Without further ado, let's get started, shall we? Currently, the only place to get Lossless Scaling is by purchasing it through Steam. And of course, Steam has regional pricing, so the price may vary by region. In the US, it is $6.99, totally worth it for what the software is capable of doing, you'll see why. It is only 5 MB in size, so no worries if you don't have much storage left. Just go ahead and check it out and we'll move on to the next part. After you got it installed in your computer, boot it up and you will be greeted with this interface. Now, it may look a bit daunting, but trust me, it is not that complicated. On the top, we got our manual, our products came with a manual. Our settings tab where we can set hotkeys, language and other basic configuration, and the scale button to apply lossless scaling to your game or videos. On the left side here, we got game profiles. This is where you will save pre-existing settings that you make down the line. And in the center, we got the settings that we will be experimenting a lot, and the one that are most impactful toward the functions of the program, which is scaling mode, scaling type, and then frame generation. And if you scroll down here, you will find all type of miscellaneous settings that we will review later on in the video. For now, we are going to set up the software. Let's start with setting up the hotkey to enable lossless scaling by going into the settings tab. Here you will find scale hotkey. This is the key combination that you will use a lot, so make sure you set it to a combination of key that you can easily remember. Personally, I use Ctrl, Alt, and L, as L stands for lossless in my brain, but you can use whatever you like. In fact, you can use 2 key combination rather than 3 like I do. After that is done, you just close it. And if you have both integrated and dedicated GPU on your system, scroll down until you find GPU and display. And make sure that you set your preferred GPU into your dedicated one. As setting it on auto would usually set it into the integrated GPU, resulting in bad performance. But if you only have one GPU in your system, then setting it on auto should be fine. In fact, you will only have auto as an option like I do. After you set the hotkey and making sure your dedicated GPU are selected, it is time to use the software according to your need. There are 3 main functions of this software. One is for scaling.
Impressive.
2 is for frame generation.
You like this? Check this out.
And 3 is for scaling plus frame generation.
Wow!
And we'll go through it one by one. The main use case of scaling is to gain more performance with minimal visual impact in GPU-bound scenario. As you may know, resolution is one of the most impactful settings when it comes to performance while running video games. As resolution increases, the number of pixels that needs to be rendered goes up, and so does the strain on your GPU. In fact, you can see people running some of the latest games in really old GPU by running it in a very low resolution.
If you ever wondered if your GT 420 could run Red Dead 2, well, I guess it kind of can.
But obviously it looked like and scaling is the workaround for that. And Lossless Scaling does it excellently. I mean, it is in the name of the software for a reason. And here is how you do it. Open up your lossless scaling, ignore the frame generation tab as you're not going to need it for scaling purposes. Select your scaling algorithm type. For 3D games, I recommend you AMD FSR, NVIDIA Image Scaling or LS1, and for 2D games, I recommend you use XBR. For this example, I'm going to do it on a 3D game, so I will use LS1. Set the sharpness to 1 for now. If it is too much or not enough, you can always experiment with it later down the line. Toggle the performance options as I don't see much difference in visual quality, but pretty significant difference in performance impact. Keep the scaling mode on auto, and here there is an option for full screen and aspect ratio. The only difference are, if you pick a resolution to scale from that is different than your native resolution aspect ratio, the full screen option would try to stretch the image and keep it full screen, while aspect ratio will give a black bar instead. So for this, I pick full screen. Scroll down and then set your sync mode to off or default. If you have high refresh rate, set it to off as it allows for the lowest latency and the screen tearing will not be as noticeable. If the screen tearing on your screen are very noticeable, then set it to default or VSync. So for this, I will set it to off. After that, keep the max frame latency to 1 again for the lowest latency possible. And then you can scroll down, search for Capture API and set it to DXGI, which is the default. After you are done, you can minimize the program and boot up your game. Alright, so here I have F1 2021 still on full screen and still on my native resolution, which is 1440p. Now, in order to scale it, we want to set the game to windowed and the resolution one or few steps below your native resolution. For me, I will pick 1080p as my native resolution is 1440p. And now we just apply that, confirm changes. Right, so now my game is windowed, and now with your game window currently active and lossless scaling currently minimized but still active, just use your lossless scaling hotkey. And lo and behold, now my game is currently running in 1080p but is scaled quite sharply to native resolution by the LS1 algorithm in lossless scaling. And here is the visual and performance comparison between native and some of the other scaling algorithms available in the program.
This is your final lap of the race.
And now we will move on to frame generation. Frame generation is actually quite a new addition to lossless scaling, just released in January this year, and it is all the rage these days due to how Nvidia marketed DLSS 3 frame generation as one of the main selling point of their 40 series. The performance multiplier, 4 times more FPS, and of course, in true Nvidia fashion, it is only available to the 40 series and supporting games. Well, afraid not, lossless scaling is here to give us universal frame generation. In order to set up frame generation for lossless scaling, you first need to cap your game FPS into a stable, consistent value. The higher your base frame rate, the better, as inconsistency, FPS drops, and FPS that is too low can lead to artifacts and janky stuff. The developer themselves recommended at least 30 FPS for 1080p and 40 FPS for 1440p. So how do you cap your FPS? Well, the best way to cap your FPS is by using Riva Tuner Statistic Server. You can Google it, download the latest version from the site Guru 3D, I also leave it in the description, install it, and then once you get into this menu, all you have to do is just edit the frame rate limit tab in the global profile. And now all of your game frame rate will automatically be capped to the value that you set here. So do not input 5. If you want to set custom value for specific game, then just click add, go to your game directory and select the EXE. And again, edit the frame rate limit tab to the frame rate value that you want. And now that value will only be applied to the specified game. Once you cap your game FPS to a stable one, as you can see in my screen, just a chill 30 FPS right there, go to your lossless scaling and then turn scaling type to off, as we are not going to be scaling anything this time. And then your frame generation to LSFG 2.3. In mode, there are 3 options. X2 is double your base frame rate, X3 is triple, and X4 is quadruple your base frame rate. Insane, isn't it? But there is a catch. The X3 and X4 options require higher base frame rate. The developer themselves recommend around 60 FPS, so it is not a solution for people who run their game in low base frame rate and then suddenly got like 20 times 4, which is 80 FPS for free. As if you use it on 20, 30 or 40 base frame rate, you will see a lot of artifacts. And trust me, I tried.
Do your editing thing, quick!
It is meant to be a solution for people who have high refresh rate monitor and wanted to achieve that insane number like 240 FPS. So if you cannot reach stable 60 FPS in your game, I recommend you use the X2 option. So set to X2 for now, performance to on, and then scroll down, sync mode to off or default, and max frame latency to 1 if you have an Nvidia card and 3 if you have an AMD card. Now just minimize your lossless scaling and go to your game, and remember you still need it in borderless or windowed, except this time you can keep it in your native resolution. As you can see in my screen, I am still in 1440p. And now all you need to do is just hit your lossless scaling shortcut, and that is it. You are running the game with frame generation. 30 FPS became 60 FPS just like that. Overlay like Riva Tuner would not detect the generated frames, but if you want to have an FPS overlay of the generated frames, you can easily do it by enabling the Draw FPS option under the rendering tab in lossless scaling, so you can see your majestic generated frame beside your base frame rate. Oh, and one thing to note, if you are playing with frame generation, make sure there is no overlay like Steam, Discord or other window on top of your game, as it can mess with the output. And here is some footage of games with X2 and X4 frame generation running side by side with their non-frame generated counterparts. Unfortunately, you probably wouldn't be able to clearly tell the difference between X2 and X4 from this footage, as YouTube can only handle 60 FPS and the X4 games goes way beyond that. But yeah, enjoy. Alright, we have done scaling, we've done frame generation, and now we are going to combine them. I know, this is some Pokemon evolution type shit. The benefit of doing this are by scaling and running the game in lower resolution, chances are you can get higher base frame rate, which in turn give you access to smoother frame generation experience. Maybe even allowing you to reach 60 FPS and use the X3 or X4 options. The prerequisite on doing this are running the game on windowed 1 step or 2 step below native resolution for the scaling. As you can see, I have Cyberpunk 2077 ready in windowed set at 1080p, and then capping your frame rate into a stable value for the frame generation. I have capped this one at 40 FPS just to be safe. After you have done that, go to your lossless scaling and select your scaling type depending on your type of games, 2D or 3D. Cyberpunk is obviously 3D, so I will pick LS1 again, and your frame generation mode depending on your base frame rate. As I am below 60 FPS currently, I am at 40 FPS, I will pick X2. Then just go back to your game window and press the shortcut, and you're done. And here are the comparisons to their native non-frame generated counterpart. Yes, indeed, lossless scaling can be used for videos. In fact, you can do scaling to anime/cartoons, as there is a scaling type called Anime4k. They say that you need to play your anime on a media player like VLC or MP3, then scale it using LS. Unfortunately, I haven't had any success with it, as it seems that there is no noticeable visual difference. Alright, so Anime4k, very large. The anime is on a media player, so that should do it. Alright, let's see. Go to full screen, then enable lossless scaling. Wait, is there a difference here? Does anything change? I need to see. Oh, what the? But there is something that is clearly working and noticeable, and that is frame gen. On any video, not only in a media player, but also in your browser, on a site like YouTube, Netflix, or TikTok. Why though? Don't. In fact, you know what? Go ahead and try to frame gen this video right now. Just set your frame generation in lossless scaling to LSFG 2.3, set it to whatever mode you like, X2, X3, X4, go full screen in this video, press your hotkey, and you'll be amazed at how well it actually worked. We have gone through all of the 3 main functions of lossless scaling. Hopefully after that you'll be able to utilize it better or know a few more things about it. But of course, this video wouldn't be called Deep Dive if we didn't check out all the features and bits of the software. So welcome to the Miscellaneous section. In this section, we are going to rapid fire all the little features and bits of the program that we have skipped in the section before. First, profiles. After you have set certain configuration, for example, one for frame gen, one for scaling, and etc., you can save it into a profile by pressing Add in the Game Profiles tab. You can name your profile, And if you want it to be applied to a certain program or games, you can set the path towards the exe in the Filters tab. Or you can use wildcards. If you know the window of the game that you want to specify, for example, Borderlands 3 window name is Borderlands 3, you can just type in asterisk Borderlands 3 asterisk, and it will try to detect that window name when it pops up. If you want the profile to automatically be applied as soon as the specified program gets launched, you can toggle autoscale to on, otherwise you can set it to off. Second, custom scaling. Some games may not include a set resolution option when you are in windowed mode. For example, Need for Speed Heat. You basically need to manually resize the game window, and I don't know why they think this was a good idea. But basically, it makes it hard for you to know what resolution you are scaling from. As a workaround, you can set a custom scaling factor in Lossless Scaling to automatically resize the game window to a certain resolution before scaling it. For example, in my case, 1.33 equal 1080p. Third, cursor settings. Clip cursor prevents your cursor to go out of the game window. If you somehow do not want that, you can turn it off. Next is adjust cursor speed. When you are scaling your game, you will feel that your mouse cursor would move a bit faster in comparison to when you are running it in native resolution. That is because your cursor would have to travel less pixel from one point to another. And for example, if you are scaling an RTS games where you already have a muscle memory of your cursor speed, the change of sensitivity may mess with your muscle memory. So the setting is there to preserve your native resolution cursor speed when you are scaling the game. The next two, hide cursor and scale cursor, just do what it says. The hide cursor would hide your cursor within the game window. And scale cursor would scale your mouse cursor depending on the resolution that you use for scaling. The smaller the resolution, the larger they get. Fourth, max frame latency. To be honest, I do not know how much the value you set in this setting can affect the performance or your experience with lossless scaling, but a tester at Abkan151 in the Lossless Scaling Discord community have said that you should just leave this setting at 3 if you have an AMD GPU and 1 for Nvidia GPU. So yeah, there's that. Fifth, HDR and Gsync support. Now I don't use either as I don't have HDR or Gsync monitor, but both of these options should fix compatibility issues with HDR or Gsync. For example, here is a picture from a member of the Lossless Scaling Discord community where they experienced some kind of contrast and color issues when using Lossless Scaling while having HDR enabled. Using the HDR support option fixes the image back to normal, and I imagine if Gsync have similar compatibility issues, this setting should fix it. 6. Capture API. First of all, do not use GDI as that is a legacy option and is only there for compatibility reason with older Windows version. I usually leave this at the default, which is the XGI, as FrameGen for me only works properly when I use the XGI. But there is a benefit of using WGC if you only want to do scaling. With the XGI, you may feel that your cursor in-game feel a bit laggy or slow. That is because your cursor will be rendered at the frame rate that your game is currently on. For example, if you have 30 FPS in-game, that means you will have 30 FPS cursor movement. With WGC, the cursor will always be rendered at your monitor refresh rate, regardless of your in-game FPS. This will make your experience more enjoyable if you are playing a game where cursor movement plays a big part, such as strategy games or board games and etc. 7. Output display. If you have multiple display, you can set where to display the output of lossless scaling. Now here is the fun part. Remember the big rule of lossless scaling of always running the game in either windowed or borderless? Well, you can bypass this in a way by having the game run on full screen in one monitor and setting the output display on lossless scaling to your other monitor. So now when you press the shortcut, you kind of have a mirror of your game that is processed by lossless scaling in your other display. I don't know why you would want to do this, but it's fun to know. 8. Crop input. It crops the output of lossless scaling. 9. Multi-display mode. When you use lossless scaling and you have multiple display connected, if you tap out of the game window and go to your other display, the game will be descaled. If you turn this on, it prevents that, so it stays scaled just like if you're playing in Borderlands natively. And that is it. We have covered almost everything there is in this small but powerful software. I did say almost everything because there is still something left, such as how to use this program with third-party utility like Special K, Reshade and stuff like that. But I feel like that is another topic, as this video purpose is to let people know what, how and why to use the feature that is built in and came out of the box with the software without requiring other third-party utility to achieve. Well, I guess River Tuna is an exception. Again, if you want to check out the software, you can buy it on Steam. I'll leave the link to the store page in the description down below. And if you are having issues and need help on troubleshooting with anything regarding lossless scaling, as there is many different factors out there that can make things not work the way they should, you can ask in the Discord server or Steam community page. Again, down in the description. That is the end of the video. Take care, everyone.